Welcome to the Lit Mom Podcast, your go-to source for bite-sized literacy tips and tricks. Join me as we explore evidence-based strategies, techniques, and resources that promote strong reading and writing skill development. Get ready to empower your family with the knowledge and tools to navigate the world of structured literacy and unlock limitless potential. Welcome to the Lit Mom Podcast, where we explore the science of reading and structured literacy and how families like yours can support your child in their learning journey at home to become strong readers and writers. I'm your host, Dev, and for the 7th episode of the Lit Mom Podcast, we are going to be focusing on decoding. What does decoding mean? How do children learn how to decode effectively? And what you can do at home with simple tips, tricks, and strategies in fun ways to support them in their learning journey. As always, before we get started with the episode, I would like to first acknowledge the traditional territory in which I reside on. I reside on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which includes the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. As part of today's episode, when we get to the picture book portion, I will share a book that is written by a Métis author. And this is one of the books that my son and I love to read. It has a different spin on a wolf and what we think of wolves when we see them. So I won't say any more, but I'm going to share that as we continue to support and celebrate Indigenous creators, authors. And I think this is a great platform to do so. To kick things off, I think it is important that we have a better understanding of what decoding is. Decoding is a skill where we are translating written words into spoken language. It is crucial that children are able to decode words to be able to become successful readers. This is a foundational skill because it helps to build upon all of these key areas and components so that they are able to comprehend what they are reading, they're able to read fluently, and it has an impact on overall reading success. If we have words in front of us and we can't read them or decode them, we can't make meaning out of them. So what is the point of reading if we don't understand it in the first place? So decoding is a really key part that we want for students to develop and build upon when we're looking at their reading journey. Decoding skills allow for children to be able to recognize and pronounce words accurately, which is crucial when we talk about reading fluency. Without strong decoding skills, children will have a hard time comprehending what it is that they're reading because they're spending so much brain power trying to focus on sounding out the letters in front of them to create the words. So the easier it is for a child to decode the words or passages in front of them, the easier it'll be for them to then comprehend and read fluently. The science of reading emphasizes phonics, phonological and phonemic awareness, and vocabulary as crucial skills that we want for children to develop early on in their reading journey. Phonics instruction really helps for children to understand the connection between letters and sounds that they spell to be able to then focus on when they are reading what letters are associated with specific sounds or letter pairs, as well as when they go on to do writing, which is the opposite of they're going to have sound and they know which letters specifically spell those sounds. So it's very important that we have phonics programs that are going to explicitly teach letter sound pairings, as well as give children time to practice these skills. So phonics is really great when we talk about decoding, and they should go together because we want for children to take what they've explicitly learned about different letter sound pairings and put it into practice, which is reading, which is the goal for all of our students at the end of the day, to be effective at reading and writing. So we want for them to have lots of time to practice decoding words. Now that we know the importance of decoding and the science behind it, I think it is important that we now touch on some practical tips and tricks that you can be using at home to support your child in developing their decoding skills. The first strategy that I would like to share with you is consider what letter sound correspondence your children know. And so this might be that they have only learned a handful of letters and the specific sounds that are associated with those letters at this time, especially if they are in kindergarten. Now, I want to be mindful when I speak of kindergarten, it is a 2-year program. So children that are in year 1 or JK are really beginning to learn phonemic awareness. They may know some letters and associated sounds, but it is something that becomes more of a focus when we look at year 2 in many classes. So just to be mindful of that, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, my child is in year 1, I need for them to know all these letter and sound pairings. That's not the case. Go slow. They have lots of time to learn these things, but it might be something that you start to work on with them when they appear to be ready to do so. Or if you're able to communicate with their teacher and just ask what they might be focusing on, whether it's phonemic awareness, blending and segmenting, other pieces, to get them ready to be able to decode and know letter and sound pairings in a way that makes them confident that they're able to recognize them when they're written out on paper or within text. One thing that you can also do if your child is in year 2, kindergarten, grade 1 and up, you might check in with the teacher and just ask which phonics program is being used in the classroom. The new language curriculum outlines that phonics is a key piece or expectation that we are to be focusing on and teaching. In grade 1, in kindergarten, they look at consonants and short vowel sounds, and they continue to build on this based on the complexity of the skill. So it's always worthwhile just reaching out to the teacher to say that you're not asking for them to create work to be taken home, because we don't have homework with our littles, but we want to say that we are looking to support at home. You might have your own ideas of how you're going to support decoding at home through this podcast, through what you've heard online, through other activities and websites. But if you know what letter and sound correspondences they've already worked on, then you're able to then build that into what you're doing at home and have a more accurate picture of what learning you can support at home that they're doing in the classroom. So for example, I used UFly Foundations as a program in grade 1. It is closely aligned with the new curriculum. And so it's a very nice flow throughout the school year, but it is very easy to share with families what specific phonics pattern we have been working on so that they can focus on it at home as well. So if you're up to it, I would approach your child's teacher and just see what is being used in the classroom so you can align that at home and not make more work for yourself with having to assess what letters and sounds they already know or don't know. Another way that you can support your child in developing their decoding skills is focus on decoding words in the very beginning, especially if they are just becoming familiar with different letter sound pairings and they don't know all of the consonants yet or short vowel sounds. But even if a child knows 5 letter sound pairings that are consonants and 1 vowel or a couple vowels, it's really easy to make short CVC words that they can then practice decoding because they know the letter and the sound that is usually associated with it, knowing that we want to do short vowel sounds first because later on they will focus on long vowel sounds. So one way to do this is you can have little Post-its or pieces of paper and you simply write out very simple words. I put little dots at the bottom just so that they can tap each one and give me each individual sound before they blend them together. So again, this is bringing in that phonemic awareness piece, but grounding it and tying it into actually looking at our written language system in front of them and actually visually seeing the letters to make that association and pairing. So they might go t, a, p, tap. One fun way to do this is you could hide these around the house. They then have to go and find them and bring them back to you and read them or decode them. You can write them out outside as hopscotch or put them up on different little circles and have them throw a ball and try to hit the words. And when they hit the word, they have to decode it. There's lots of really fun ways that you can engage your children in different decoding activities that don't make it feel like it's work. At the end of this episode, I'm going to share a few free resources that are going to be online or can be printed as well to support this at home. So if they're doing well with individual words and it's beginning to become evident that they're able to blend it all together when they're decoding very quickly, and it's no longer giving each individual sound before they can blend the word together, you might start to give them sentences. And again, you want for the sentences to use words that they are able to decode or words that we call heart words or irregular words that they have previously learned. So that is an irregular word that we often see in writing. So it's one that we want to teach early on. But this is something that, again, really easy to hide around the house that they can bring to you and they have to practice reading it. But again, we're going to work up from very simple words to simple sentences to multiple sentences or passages. So that's something to just be mindful of when you're working with your child at home. You don't want to give them full sentences if they haven't yet figured out or learned a few letter sound pairings effectively and efficiently. So that brings us to my third tip or idea, which is to play different phonics games and activities. This might be that you make a bingo card, that you play tic-tac-toe, and they have to spell a certain word as their piece or as their player on the board and then read it. Or you can create simple tic-tac-toe boards where it already has words within the squares, and to be able to put their game piece on that square, they have to decode the word. So there's lots of different ways that you can bring in phonics games, go fish, things like that to practice the decoding skills. And one fun way you can do it as well, especially if you create these for them to be practicing the decoding and hide them around the house, you can play a game where if you are going to play like headbands and you put it on your head like this, and they have to give you each individual sound, okay, and then you have to blend it together, and then you would switch. So then your child would put up a card, you would give them each sound and they would blend it together. So again, that's more of an oral piece, but visually you are practicing them seeing the word, giving each individual sound to be blended together. A fourth tip or strategy is to continue to build your child's background knowledge and vocabulary. The more words that they have an understanding of and they have seen or visually are familiar with, then they are going to have a better chance of understanding when they're going to come across those words in reading and in text. So you want to continue to build your child's vocabulary as part of the components that we want to tie together when we think about decoding. So there's many pieces at play at one time: oral language, vocabulary, background knowledge, phonemic awareness. All of these skills need to be working together so that we can become successful readers and writers. So it's not just do one thing and only focus on one thing, but find different ways that you can loop it all in together and practice different skills and strategies throughout the week. My final recommendation is to do read alouds. When I say that this week, I don't mean that you are going to sit and read to your child. Well, I do always recommend that as a strategy, but what I mean is when your child is ready to start reading simple sentences, I would look into different decodable passages. So UFly has passages that are free online, whether you look at a tablet or your phone or you're able to print them, but your child can then practice reading out loud to you. The more practice they have actually reading and putting all of these skills into play and decoding, the more efficient and successful they're going to be at these skills. So we want to give them that practice where they are going to read to you with your help, but that you're not the only one doing the reading. So I will link in the show notes to the UFly toolbox as one of the resources today that you can check out, but they have decodable passages for every phonics pattern that is covered. So even if your child's teacher is not using UFly in the classroom, but you want to have access to decodable text, I still encourage you to check them out and just consider what they might have already learned or what they know based on your understanding of what program is being used in the classroom or what you have seen your child demonstrate they have an understanding of, and pick one and go from there. If it's too hard, then go into the earlier lessons and pick a different one and see how they do. It might be that they only read one sentence in the beginning and you start to build up from there once they get more confident and find themselves being better able to decode the words in front of them. Now, it is important to mention that if they are reading to you in the very early stages, it is okay if they give each individual sound before blending the word together. They are still using all of the skills that they need to be effective at reading. It just takes some time and practice, especially when we want them to use effective and appropriate decoding strategies. We don't want for children to be looking at pictures in books and guessing. We want to avoid that by asking them to focus on the letters within the words in front of them and support them from there. So as we get into older grades or children that easily can decode simple syllable, one syllable words, When we look at multisyllabic words, we actually start to decide whether we want to break them down by syllables to decode them, because we know so many of the letter sound pairings. We can switch in and out different vowel sounds to decide if the word is accurate or inaccurate based on how we're reading it. Or we talk about breaking down words based on the morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning within a word, because they're able to understand or pick that piece out and then pull the full word together. So if you have a kiddo who does very well with reading one syllable words, but they're getting stumped on those multisyllabic words, then it might be the time to talk about different syllables or morphemes if you are comfortable doing so, and how they can break up a word into smaller chunks so they're able to read each chunk and then pull all those together to read the words independently. So not only does the UFly toolbox have the decodable passages for each phonics pattern that is covered within the manual, but they also have what's called the roll and read game. And so this is a game that you can print or you can keep on your tablet, and you can have your child roll a die, and then they have to read the word that is within the column underneath that specific number. They can color it in, or they can use game pieces if you print it out and see how many they can fill in on the board. You can play against each other. I have seen different ways of getting creative and printing out two, and you play Battleship against each other just by filling the spaces. So lots of fun ways that you can use a simple printout, but it has them really doing the decoding, and there's no pictures, so they really have to focus on the letters in front of them and pulling together what sounds do those letters spell to create individual words. A second resource that is worth checking out that is free is phonicsandstuff.com. There are a range of games that your child can play on the computer or tablet that have them practicing their decoding skills, looking at multiple different games. So something worth checking out if you're looking for some games or activities that can be done using technology. When it comes to a picture book, I am going to share a few different pieces today, knowing that we're talking about decoding. So not only can you access the UFly toolbox for free resources for decoding, but if you're looking to have hard copies of books, I do know that you can purchase these ones through Scholastic. They come in a set sometimes of 12. They're called Bob books, but again, they are decodable. So as long as your child has had that explicit instruction for what the letter and sound correspondence is, they should be able to practice decoding the words. So this is an option if you're looking to have a book at home. And I know many people say that decodables are boring, but I have yet to have a child tell me that they're boring. And they actually, last year in our grade 1 classroom, if I took a book away from the class because I thought it was one that we were done with, the kiddos often would ask me where that book went and if I could bring it back in. So to us, what we might think is boring is not always boring to children, especially when it's supporting their learning. They are feeling confident and like they can do the task independently. So don't discount the books based on how simple they might look. Now that we are at the end of the 7th episode, I would like to share the picture book that I briefly mentioned at the beginning of today's episode. So the book that I would like to share today is The Girl and the Wolf, and it is written by a Métis author by the name of Katharina Vermette, and the illustrations are by Julie Flett. This book is available for purchase through goodminds.com. So if you're looking to check out this one, I recommend purchasing it on that website if you're able to do so. So there you have it. This is the 7th episode of the Lit Mom podcast, and we just took a deep dive into what is decoding and how can you support your child in developing their decoding skills at home. As always, I hope that these episodes, though they may be short and they're jam-packed with lots of information, that they provide you with practical tips and tricks that you can turn around and go and use and implement just based off what we've talked about today. For the 8th episode, we are going to shift a little bit and we are going to focus on writing. We've talked a lot about the literacy skills that are going to be connected to reading, but we don't want to forget about writing. So for the 8th episode of the Lit Mom podcast, we will discuss some tips and tricks that you can support your child at home with developing their writing skills. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lit Mom podcast. I know that it is time out of your busy schedules with all the other things that have to happen in your day. So I truly appreciate you taking the time to do some learning and listening as I talk about literacy, which is something that I truly love to share with others. And I hope that it is helpful for you at home with your child or children in supporting their literacy journeys. As always, I'm your host, Dev, and this is the Lit Mom podcast where we bring literacy tips and tricks straight to your headphones. Until next time, keep learning, keep sharing, and keep growing.